This week's episode of Developer Voices kind of unifies a few of the biggest reasons that people get into programming in the first place. You've got a love of learning new things. You've got the fun of solving puzzles and technical challenges. And you've also got the very real need to find a good job. I've always considered that we're very lucky in this profession that we can combine those three things fairly successfully. So this week, we're going to take a peek into the world of competitive coding. Solving algorithmic challenges against the clock. You can do it solo, you can do it as a team sport. And while you're definitely going to pick up a few very useful tips for gaming programming interviews, we're mostly talking about the game for the game's sake. How can we play with computers? How can we play better? And where's the most fun to be had? Joining me to discuss it is a veteran of the competitive coding world, and these days a coach to younger teams, Mathis Hammel. And I think by the end of this, he'll have you convinced that he could ace any programming interview that's based on algorithmic tests, that's probably not the right way to interview new candidates, but we're going to carry on doing it anyway. And most of all, that if we focus too much on coding to get the job, we'll be missing out on a whole lot of fun. So let's get into it. I'm your host, Chris Jenkins. This is Developer Voices, and today's voice is Mathis Hammel. With me today, coming live from France, it's Mathis Hammel. Mathis, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm very well, yes. Enjoying the warm weather we seem to be unusually having on the continent.
Yeah, same. We have a lot of heat right now, but I think it's more bearable than yours.
Yeah, we over in England, we buckle quickly under the hot weather. But enough weather. I got you in because you've got such a varied CV. There are like 1,000,001 things we could talk about. We're going to get onto the actual topic. But you've been like head of cybersecurity for Capgemini. You've done talks on quantum computing. You've give me your history and try and give me a unifying thread of what you're interested in.
Yes. Well, the unifying thread, I think it's pretty simple, is I'm very tech curious. So anything that makes me think, wow, this is an interesting topic, I just get into it, and sometimes I make it into a job. But I've always been fond of anything, especially related to competition. I'm not doing that like to beat others and show myself that I'm better than others, but just the fact that I have, this spirit of competition and actually playfulness. And so, I've worked in AI. My first job was in AI. Then I moved to cybersecurity. Yes, that's one thing I've been exploring for a long time. Since I was in high school, I think. And now I'm more on the, I'd say, technical recruitment and competitive programming sides, which is also competitive programming. I think we're going to talk about that into more detail, but I've been enjoying that for like 10 years, I'd say.
I can see like a competitive thing in AI, especially like game-based AI. There's natural competition there. Cybersecurity is kind of a geek's war between two different sides. But the world I really have no experience of, even though it's obviously competitive, is competitive coding.
Yeah.
So other than, those algorithms you were supposed to learn at university, do those really fast. That's the whole of my knowledge of it. So take me through what it's like to be on a competitive coding team.
So competitive programming, if I think the most common experience people will have will be in some websites like Code Wars, Code Forces, Coding Game. Mm-hmm. I work for Coding Game, by the way, but I enjoy a lot of our competitors as well. And also you have Advent of Code, which by some people is played competitively. Like myself, I enjoy doing that as fast as I can. So yeah, the principle is really simple. Actually, it's the format varies, but um, you have maybe 2 or 5 or 12 hours to solve a set of problems as fast as you can and as many problems as you can. So usually you will have like gradually increasing difficulties,
Mm.
and yeah, you are ranked based on the time and the number of problems you solve, basically.
Advent of code, I know, right? As like the thing I love about that is the programming puzzles, right? And sometimes it takes me most of the day to finally crack it. And then you look at the leaderboard and there's somebody who got up at 3 a.m. and cracked it within 2 minutes.
Yeah, I am one of those people.
How do you become a person like that? I'm not sure I'm ever going to get up at 3 a.m. and do knapsack algorithms in 3 minutes. But if I wanted to, would I get to that level?
I'd say it's. I'm not really sure actually how you like really get into that. I'm just the idea of getting the best out of what I can do and really trying my best to to crack one puzzle as fast as I can and get my brains going is one thing that keeps me going in the kind of training, even though I don't really consider anything I do being training. It's more like I play, and over time I get better at doing that.
Mm.
So there's not really like two phases, like one competition and one practice where I just do so something really specific over and over. But how do you get into that? I think it's just like, oh, I played that, it felt good. I mean, let's do another one next week or something, and that's it.
You just keep playing the game over and over and eventually get better.
Yeah, that's about it. Well, you at some point you'll and it will usually come very fast. You'll realize that you need to have like theory, and you need to read some stuff and like read some books or papers or whatever to actually get what you need and learn what you need. But it's mostly practicing, and so mostly playing, and it's also a very good thing because I I don't think I would have like the willpower to do like 12 hours of practicing before any contest or anything. So my training is just more competing, which is very efficient for me because I really love competing and not really training, I guess.
You're not trying to get to the very top of the podium. You just love being in the game.
Yeah, that's about it. And
Oh,
over time, you'll after doing like sorry, after doing like all of them, you'll get better inevitably. So even not even if I'm not trying, I'll get better and better rankings, and so that's also very satisfying to get that.
what's it? What's the actual experience like? Because my impression of these things is you read a puzzle and it's dressed up in some fancy way, but eventually the penny drops and you realize, oh, this is the A star algorithm, and then you try and remember how to implement A star. And is it like that?
Yeah, that's it depends. I'd say the easier competitions are like this, so they disguise an algorithm that's exactly as it's designed, like in any book or something. So you just need to find which one to apply to whatever problem you need.
Hmm.
But for more advanced stuff, it's more like, okay, this it really depends, but it's usually a way of applying a family of algorithms, and you need to actually create your own algorithm. So I'm not really sure I have an easy example, but one very classic one is dynamic programming, which is basically one way of modeling mathematically a problem, and
Hmm.
this modeling is really not standard based on different problems. The way of like actually computing the solution based on the formulas you create, yeah, it's easy. It's always the same, but creating those and actually cracking that little thing that allows you to detect what exactly you need to do is actually the heart of the problem. And usually it's on the more difficult side. In when you're playing easier competitions, it's either algorithms. So usually it's pretty simple algorithms, like you mentioned, like graph path search or shortest path and things like this. Or it's something we call speed coding, which is very very simple exercises that only need implementation, basically. So a good example for that would be like the first 5 to 10 days of advent of code, which usually you don't need to know a lot of algorithms to solve.
Yeah. Yeah, you can sort of mentally brute force those ones, right? And then they gradually ramp up the difficulty to where you need to be up to speed with some of the latest papers sometimes.
Yeah, that's about it. Yes, and so sometimes you immediately know what you need to know, what you need to do, and this is what you actually implement. So sometimes it's pretty complicated. I've had like speed coding exercises with like 100 lines of Python, for example. It doesn't mean that it's very like easy to do and very fast, but the algorithm, it's pretty simple and you could do that by hand. And some other times, yes, you need to like identify actually the algorithm that's hiding behind that. And this requires a bit more knowledge. And oftentimes, if you are competing, it also requires knowing a few tricks to code them faster. So, for example, for advent of code, in the last like 3 editions I've played, I haven't coded a single graph algorithm because I'm using libraries. I'm defining my graphs.
Yeah.
I'm using network X in Python, which is super efficient for that. And yeah, I'm just modeling my stuff and let the algorithms coded by other people better than me do the job.
So these days you're going into Advent of Code, which for those that don't know is like 24 daily programming puzzles leading up to Christmas, right? These days you're going into that with your pre-prepared, hand-tailored library, like a
Yeah, I
chef with all
mean,
his tools at arm's length.
I have a template. It's not that big. It's like 50 lines long, but it does three very important things. It's so I have in the first lines of the code, I have imports of the most common stuff, and I have a few defined functions. For example, one that parses a list of numbers that are. So I give that function a string containing numbers separated by spaces, and it gives me back a list containing these integers. So this kind of easy functions also, like I define constants for example, the 4 directions, so up, right, down, and left. So
Oh,
with
yeah.
the deltas in each direction, stuff like this that I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to use in that competition. So this is the first thing, pre imported and prepared code. Also, I have a part with my cookie, my session cookie on the website, which allows me to do download the problem statement. No, not really the problem statement because I read it on the web, but download automatically the input for that day,
Yeah.
put that in a string, and then I can process it instantly instead of doing what everybody normal does, which is downloading the inputs,
Yeah.
putting that in a file, opening the file, reading that. It loses you, even if you code fast. This can lose you a minute, and a minute is like way too much in that space. And that's an easy gain of time. Other people do way more extreme stuff to gain like 5 seconds. I
Like
don't go
what?
to these lengths, but yeah, I think I'm pretty optimized. And of course, the third part of my template does the submitting of the result. And so
Oh, so
I
you've automated it to that degree.
sorry.
You've automated it to that degree, just to
Yeah, I
shave off
mean
those seconds.
everything that's done every day or that's I have to do frequently, I have it prepared so I don't lose time actually doing the implementation of whatever I need to do.
Do you have a similar thing for like, so there's the ICPC, which is the big international coding contest. Can you wander in there with your pre-prepared library?
Um, yes and no. So the ICPC has much different rules. So first of all, it's student only.
Okay.
So I used to play. I have played twice in the ICPC regional qualifiers. It's not really that impressive because it's open to everybody. The first time I played actually was absolutely terrible. We weren't prepared. We got the news that our team had their spot. We got the news 5 days before, and it was in another country. So we that was a lot of stuff to prepare, even on logistics. So we weren't really prepared. And in the team, we were two French guys and one German guy. So
Right.
language barrier. I was coding in Python. My fellow French friend was coding in C++, and the German guy was in Java. So yeah, that's a lot of incompatibility and inefficiencies, especially combined with not training a lot. But yeah, as I
Right.
mentioned, it's played in teams of three.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty much the only. No, it's not the only, but it's one of the rare competitions where you play in teams. Another classic example would be Google Hashcode, which rest in peace because it's been shut down by Google. But
Mm.
yeah, there's not a lot of competitive programming played in teams. This one is also very specific because you have 5 hours to solve between 12 and 15 problems, and you don't have internet access, and you only have one computer.
Oh, geez. You have
So
ChatGPT though, right?
no, but one thing you're allowed, and the only external resource that you're allowed to have is
Mm.
one notebook. That's, I think you're allowed 25 pages of whatever you want. So usually you will have most of the classic algorithms that you're not like coding by heart. So a few like string matching algorithms that you use in very specific cases and stuff like this.
Yeah.
It's actually, you usually don't really need this notebook. It's only for safety. I've used it once. It was for a convex hull algorithm, which I think we would have gotten, but it's there's much more comfort in having that prepared in your notebook.
Yeah.
Some teams will have their template and copy that at the beginning of the contest, because you start on a computer that's basically brand new, like there's a fresh new install, so you don't have any files and you are only allowed to touch the computer when the contest starts. So it's
Oh, God.
basically you have to choose, either you start coding immediately or you have someone start implementing your whole template, so like 300 lines of prepared functions and stuff to get faster later.
Right.
But usually the teams will not do that.
Instantly thinking I would lose a lot of time to just setting up my favorite editor.
Yeah, it's so first, yeah, you're allowed to ask for any specific IDE you want in that
Okay.
contest, which is good. But usually it's even in that case, we usually use very simple stuff like Sublime Text or VS Code, because there's three teammates and it's not really common to have all three teammates use the same IDE in their daily life. So
Yeah.
usually we pick the more simple and common stuff. So yeah, that's it. But yeah, you have a practice day before, so you have a shorter contest on the day before, which is 2 hours, and you are in the same conditions. So you have like your notebook, you have the same blank computer that allows you to understand how to get started. Also, make a few submissions on the judge website to
Right.
make sure that everything's working and stuff. And so, this is the only part of the contest where the contestants are allowed to chat with their coaches. On the real contest, we are in another building. The
Oh,
coaches.
right. So there is actually like a coach on court.
Yeah.
for the first
And
day?
and nowadays I'm a coach, so I'm not a student anymore. So I've been coaching my former team. So it's, well, former team, actually it's my university where I graduated from. I coach them still. So the team changes basically every year, because once people graduate, they can't be in the team anymore. And so yeah, it's very nice to have like fresh blood, people to
Yeah.
work with, and teach them how to get better. It's also very frustrating because sometimes you lose like a great element. One of the best students graduates or goes into academic exchange, because we have a lot of Erasmus exchange programs,
Right.
and so they leave. Oftentimes, they leave for the last year. So actually, we have students up until fourth year, and all the fifth year students leave to go abroad, and
Uh,
oftentimes compete in their own universities.
do you know, this is off topic, but I'm thinking of all those like Disney movies where a coach comes in and coaches the team to great success, and they've got loads of those for every sport, right? And this is a missing gap in the Disney stockpile.
Yeah, we should make a movie about competitive programming. I think
Yeah, yes, I've
would
got
be
all
a
those
hit on
feel-good
a
success
very,
stories you want.
yeah, on a very niche audience, but I think it will work.
I love niche audiences. We live in them, right? Okay, so, but okay, how does this actually play out? If you've got a team of you said it was 12 to 15 questions. Three
Yeah.
people sit down and they're not even using the same programming language. What do you do? Do you race through the list of questions and the Java guy says, I'll have that one and that one and that one?
So, well, first of all, having three different languages is not really a good idea in a team. It was just because we made our team last minute. Usually, we'll try to have people on the same language,
Okay.
and also people speaking the same language, because we also have incoming exchange students. And so usually we'll have one team that speaks only in English. And so the problems are given to you in random order, so you don't know which ones are easier. So the first step is to actually read through all of them and find out which one or two are the easiest. So we call them ad hoc problems, which will be the ones you really need to start coding first, because there's also a time element. Basically, your score is, you are ranked, the team is ranked based on the number of problems they solved. So
Hmm.
usually the most, like the bulk of the competition, solves between 2 and 5 problems. When you start getting into 6, 7, 8, 9, it's really like the top 20% or something. So
Okay.
most of the teams will not solve half the problems. And you really need to get started fast, because it's yeah, the rule is pretty weird to explain, but there's, in case of a tie, so for example, other teams that solved 4 problems, they will be ranked based on a time penalty, which is basically you take the sum of the times of submissions of the problems. So
Hmm.
you have solved one problem after 5 minutes, another after 20 minutes. That's a 25-minute penalty. And so
Right.
you have to get fast, especially on the first problems, and you have to submit them in the first minutes. So the first part is actually searching very fast. So you split usually 12 problems to 3 people. It's perfect. You have 4 problems each, and you try to find the easiest problem in the problem set, basically.
Yeah.
And one person will actually get started coding on that and submitting that as fast as they can. Usually it takes, the first correct submission takes maybe 1 or 2 minutes max. So
From the gate opening.
yes.
Jeez. Okay. That's really far. I mean, they must be going at breakneck speed. Do you get people drilling their typing speed as well?
Yeah, there's warm up. I've known some people who warmed up actually before their contest. They do like typing stuff. They are
Hmm.
only typing words. I think they should do that with code. but just to get their fingers warm. I don't really do that kind of exercises. I think same. It's like a lot of effort to gain like 6 seconds or something. I'm not really into that, but some people really need also to get in that spirit. So like get focused and stuff. So that's
So,
fun.
how far up the rankings did you get with this? Obviously, very into it, but fairly casual attitude to.
So in the European qualifiers, with my best. So in the European Championship, basically, which in the southwest of Europe is called SWERC, so SWERC, which is a qualifier for the World Finals. The World Finals, there's like 100 teams. In southwestern Europe, we'll usually have like 3 or 4 of these spots.
Right.
Many of those come from Russia, many of the world finalists.
I
But
can imagine.
in the European qualifiers, the year last year I played, there were I think 120 teams, and we ended up 24th. So pretty happy with the result.
That's very
And well,
respectable.
I've it's been like 5 years now. But this year I've been also playing Advent of Code competitively. The thing is, they get released at midnight Eastern time in the US,
Right.
which is 6 a.m. here in France. And I'm not waking up at 6 a.m. every morning. That's not something I'm doing in December. So
Yeah.
I cannot compete on the global leaderboards, because to avoid cheating and stuff, they time everybody starting from the release of the problem, which is perfectly normal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't compete because people usually complete it in like 5 to 15 minutes, usually most of the days. So I cannot play it whenever I wake up. So
Yeah.
what I've been doing was having like a virtual timer, which is a Chrome extension that times the moment I open a problem statement until the moment I finally solve the problem. And so it allows me to basically know my ranking if I were playing at 6 a.m. every day.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, this year I've been pretty successful. I'm pretty sure if I was in the top 100. Uh, Let me search. I think I have my actual virtual ranking.
Because these are, I've played Advent of Code seriously some years, casually others, but then the speeds of the top ranked players just astonish me. But there
Yeah,
are people solving it before I've finished reading the problem statement.
I just checked. If I were playing normally, I would have been 46 on the global leaderboard.
Really, this recent year?
Yeah,
There's a
last
huge
year.
number of competitors for Advent of Code.
Yeah, I've been. Let me check. My best ranking was, I think, yeah, one day I was 14th globally on a problem
Virtual
that
14th.
took me
Huh?
6 minutes to solve both parts. On if you want to compete with me at home, it was on day 18.
Day 18 of 22.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. It took me 8 minutes. That's 6 minutes between parts 1 and 2.
Okay, I'm going to link to that particular problem in the show notes. And
Nice.
if you have a look at that as a listener, I'm sure you'll see quite how fast that is. Because they get harder and harder as the clock
Yeah.
goes on. So day 18 is a lot harder, right?
Well, that one I think must have been very easy, because day 19 took me an hour and 19 minutes.
Very easy is relative depending on your skill set. But this is huge fun, but weirdly for you, it seems to have translated into a spot in your career, right?
Yeah, I've been. So yeah, there's not a lot of work in competitive programming or cybersecurity, for that matter, because I've been enjoying that a lot in the past as well. There's not really a lot of work. I mean, people want you to build websites or apps to make money. They don't want you to like yeah, great. You've been 50th place on the Advent of Gold. Wow, that's wow. We're really gonna earn money from that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's. But I've managed to find some interesting stuff. So for competitive programming, my current job, I kind of do that. I also now I'm an independent consultant, and so I do work with one of the biggest providers of coding contests in Europe, which is called Isograd.
Hmm.
And especially in France, they make like most of the big competitions. And so now I create the problems and I proofread those from other
Ah,
redactors. So
yeah.
I'm kind of on the other side. I was first a participant, then a coach, and now I'm actually in the creators. I've actually also participated in finals of Google Code Jam as kind of
Oh, yeah, I
a
remember that one.
volunteer because I was interning at Google. The first year Code Jam was in Dublin, and I was there in Dublin. And when they requested for volunteers, of course, I was in. So that was also a nice experience. And also in cybersecurity as well. There weren't any jobs in competitive cybersecurity, so I made mine. I went to so I we were in charge of so with my as a freelancer with my brother we were in charge of organizing a big contest for Capgemini in France,
Right.
and we met the director of cybersecurity and we were like, let's do more stuff together. And so I actually ended up working there for 2 years. And one of my jobs was to create the first semi-professional CTF team, so competitive cybersecurity teams. So I had 7 people in the team plus me,
Hmm.
who were basically paid 1 day a week to train and compete in public events to basically get the name of the company out and be like it's also good employer branding because now students, because it's played a lot by students, they realize, okay, this is a good team. I kind of want to play with them. They are good. I want to work there. And
Yeah.
so we actually got a few candidates coming from that source, and we were also paid to have fun and travel Europe. So it was very nice.
Nice work if you can get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so that's almost getting into the like those sponsored esports teams.
Uh, I'm. I don't think we're. Uh, it's a bit pessimistic, but we've been trying for years to have like something that looks good visually for competitive technical competitions. It's very hard to do because video games or even maybe chess or Go or whatever competitive thing you can see online or on TV,
Mm.
it's very visual. You can understand not really like with a deep level of analysis, but understand who's winning and who's not, and it's very active and you have like this action in competitive programming. The basically the thing you can have is watching a screencast of the teams or of the players, which is interesting if you are into that and you can understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
But they'll be playing in other languages and stuff, so even people of my level, I can't really understand what they're doing if they're coding in C++, for example.
Right. Yeah.
And so basically the only thing you have left would be their leaderboard. So the leaderboard, once a problem is submitted or something, you see the update and you see, oh, congrats, they moved up, and that's basically it. But it's super boring to watch. Actually, there's like one update per minute, especially at the end of the contest. So in the European Championships, the
Mm.
first, I think, more than half the submissions happen in the first hour. And so the next 4 hours, it's the pace goes down and down until like every team is basically stuck. So we've tried to find ways to make this watchable and interesting, but
Yeah.
We haven't cracked the code yet. And well, if
That is a
anyone at
difficult problem.
home does have an idea, please get in touch, and we're gonna be rich. But for now,
My solution is to let people gamble on it. If enough people gamble on it, then someone will figure out a way to televise it.
yeah, true. But there's one player you would always gamble on, and you would always win. He's
Oh,
called
really?
yeah, Gennady Korokevich. Is his nickname is Tourist, and
Tourist.
he's the best player in the world by far.
Oh,
Every
really?
every contest he plays, he wins basically. He's won like 6 Google Code Jams in a row. He's won, yeah,
Oh, geez.
every. He's I think he's won the World Championships twice. The reason being, that you cannot play more than twice in the World Finals. So he won twice, and the following year, actually, he went back, and so he wasn't allowed to compete, but
Yeah.
he went back to stream the contest. So I think he was a coach or something, and so he live streamed himself solving the contest with his 2 friends, which are also very good. And
Mm.
he made a like much better performance than any of the teams. And so this guy, he's basically invincible in competitive programming.
Right.
Also in so I practice a lot on Code Forces, which resembles a lot the setup of world championships and European championships. And usually you have like 10 to 20,000 people playing each contest. So there's like contests twice a week or something, which
Mm.
lasts 2 hours. And this guy, if he doesn't finish first, he will actually go down in ranking. So there's like kind of an elo system, and if
Oh,
he
like the chess
finishes,
ranking thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
if he finishes second out of 20,000 people, he will actually lose points. So that's how far up he is. Well, maybe now it has changed. I've not heard of him in a while, but yeah,
Maybe,
he used to be excellent. I'm sure it's still the same today.
maybe he's retired.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, it sounds like you're saying you're not going to get to that level any day soon, or no one is, and I'm certainly not. But I do enjoy these kind of coding puzzles. Have you got any tips for me to get from like I can do them in the day to I can knock them out quickly?
So I have 2 things. One is, if you want to get better at thinking of a solution fast and implementing that as quickly as you can. And the other tip would be on how to expand your horizons and broaden your knowledge to be able to solve more problems. So to do this kind of fast solving things and get better at speed coding
Hmm.
would be Clash of Code, which is a game mode on coding game. So again, I work for coding game, and
Okay.
I've been a happy user for 6 years now. And we have this format which you have a 15. So you have a room with 8 people. It's 8 real people.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people playing, so you'll usually wait not more than like 30 seconds before the room fills up. There's people of every levels. We don't really match people with similar skill, and that's also to allow people to progress learning from people better than them.
Okay.
And so this, you have a 15-minute problem. Usually, if it's like a simple one, it usually takes not more than like 2 minutes for the best players to solve it. And yeah, you have a very simple. It's very much like Advent of Code. You can code in any language you want, and
Hmm.
the goal. So we have 3 goals, but mostly it's be the fastest. We also have like more formats, which is make the shortest code. So here you have actually to learn other languages. That's why I actually started learning Ruby a while ago, because Ruby is more efficient at code golf, so at short code.
Right.
And also we have one other mode which is also fastest. So you need to do the fastest code, but you don't have the problem statement. You only have the test cases. So input and expected output, and you
Yeah.
have to kind of guess what you need to do. So usually it's like processing numbers and finding like the right formula, like you add a plus b and you multiply by c
Right.
or something. It's but it also gets your brain going. But most of the time you'll find fastest problem. So a normal problem that you have to solve as fast as possible, and this is good to actually set your brain in a mode that makes you think about a solution instantly. As while you're parsing the problem, you're already getting the solution and you can start coding as fast as you can. And this is also very, very helpful for coding interviews. I've
Yeah.
my story is always that I've played this so Clash of Code on coding game for a week straight before my Google interviews, and then I aced them, so I got the internship there. Um, and yeah, this is so to really get good at speed coding and solving more simple problems. This is a very, very good way, because also you can read after the 15 minutes ends, you can read your competitors' codes, and you can often discuss. We have a Discord as well, and it's a very open community. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of actually like very strong competition and I hate my opponent and stuff.
Right.
We're all friends in that world, and it's actually not really competing. I should rather say playing.
Playing. Yeah.
It's really a game. And so for my second piece of advice, to how to get better at actually more complex algorithms, but it also works actually for the more simple stuff.
Mm.
But what the better players do to improve is called upsolving. So you play a contest. So usually it's on Code Forces. The more, so we have a lot of others, but Code Forces I think is the main one. You play a contest. It lasts 2 hours. You have 6 problems or so, and usually so it's in divisions. So if you're like between that and that ranking, you will play in this range of problems. So actually there's like per competition you have like 12 problems, but
Yeah.
you only see 6 of them, depending on kind of the window depends on where you are ranked, because you're not going to ask like world class player to solve the very easiest problem.
Right.
And for the more beginner, we're only going to show them the easiest 6 problems, and
Yeah.
it's usually more than enough to get you stuck.
Right.
It's you already start a bit on a more difficult problem. So usually you can solve like maybe 3 out of the 6.
Mm.
And the thing is, after the event, so you have read usually 1 or 2 problems above what you actually managed to do. And these 2 problems, you are gonna read the solution. So it's usually published in the form of an editorial. So the author of the problem will publish just a few lines to explain the solution. You also have the code, but you don't really have to read it. The most important thing is read the solution, understand it, because it's much easier to come up with to read a solution than to come up with a solution to any given problem. And
Yeah.
so what you do is you make sure you understand that, and then you go back to your editor, you code the solution as you understood it, and make sure that you manage to solve that. And so you submit after the event, and you check that your solution implemented was correct. And that means you learned something at that point, and you learned how to go just a bit above your level. And so by
Yeah.
doing that over and over, it will teach you a lot and a lot, especially patterns that come back often. And sometimes you see like, okay, there's a list, I have to count whatever. And you're like, okay, I know this is a permutation problem. I know about permutation signatures or something that I didn't know about. So this and that and that, and it allows you to really strengthen your skill set in algorithms.
Yeah. Yeah. Gradually, like continually just finding out where the edge of your personal knowledge envelope is and stepping beyond that. It seems to me those two tips kind of split into like speed coding, right? It's kind of, tell me if you think this is true, but it's kind of the speed coding is only really useful for gaming job interviews, which, in my opinion, aren't great interview techniques for figuring out how good you'd actually be at the job. The other side, the second tip, is actually going to expand your toolkit for programming in the real world.
I'd say yes and no.
Okay.
First of all, because you are saying the only useful skill is the one I don't enjoy. I'm more of a speed coder actually.
Okay.
So, but no, actually, yes, I completely agree with the fact that it's an easy way to kind of cheat coding interviews. I'm not a good developer. I'm aware of that. I would say I'm a great speed coder, but I'm not a good developer in general. Yeah, because I can get any job I want if they only test for simple problem solving, which is 99% of interviews. But on the other hand, it's also playing competitive programming. And speed coding especially. It's not useless in the way that it will teach you a lot of things about your own language and making you more comfortable with coding. So for example, I don't need to check any documentation for if I'm coding something in Python. All the built-ins, I know them by heart, the arguments and stuff. So I don't need to go check that. It makes also more sense in my head. Like when I need to implement a function that does something pretty simple, I don't need to think really hard about it. I kind of know the best way to do that in terms of efficiency and stuff. But yeah, that's true that it's more like a game than any other thing. If you do that in with the only intent to be a better programmer, I would say just do other stuff, code your own side projects. You're gonna progress much faster. But if you're like having fun, that's more like it. And yeah, it's I don't consider that a way of really improving a lot compared to the time you spend on that. It's more of finding your boundaries and playing very hard stuff and like bashing your head for 2 hours on a given problem and then having it dawn on you in your sleep. It happens to me a lot.
Yeah.
When I
That
was
is.
practicing for the European Championships, I used to often dream about algorithm problems that I kind of made up in my head. And during my dream, and in my dream, I was like, oh, this is a very hard problem. It's very interesting. And I wake up and I'm like, oh no, the problem actually is interesting, but it's very easy to solve. But yeah, it's pretty funny to find a way of a game. I mean, it's like playing sports. Actually, it's
Yeah.
if you want to be a pro in that, there's like 100 people that are pro in that in the world, maybe, and that's it. But if you want just that for fun and to do something that you're good at already, well, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Not every single thing in the universe has to be about productivity, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, okay, that sounds. One other thing I was going to ask you, because I mean, I found Advent of Code. I keep coming back to Advent of Code because that's my reference point for this. I found it a lot of fun. I'm okay at it. I'm not great, but I do it for fun. Sometimes I do it to like exercise a new language they want to learn because it's a
Yes,
forcing function.
a lot of people will actually do that to learn a new language. You solve a few puzzles in that first
Mm,
to make that easier on yourself, because coding like a several thousand line projects from scratch on a new language, it's going to be very painful and you are going to regret the choices you made at the very beginning and stuff. Whereas you solve puzzles, your code is like 20 lines, you throw it away at the end. And when you throw it away once, you get all the test cases passing
yeah.
and you get better after that. But you're not like haunted by the mistakes of the past and when you were starting to learn. So, and that's also a good way to have like atomic problems that you don't need like very specific stuff to do. So for example, if you're building a side project, you're going to spend most of the time trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to use like this framework, and so I need this to make the connections between my database and the code and stuff. So it's mostly like configuration and figuring out which libraries are used and stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas you solve simple puzzles and small competitions, you're gonna have the only the distillate of that, and you're gonna have pure code, pure it's pure functional. I wouldn't say it's a confusing term, but yeah, that's
isolated into a specific. The nice thing about that too is side projects, they're almost infinite. If they go well, they keep growing. It's nice to have something that occasionally has a definite end.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm doing only that basically. I have a very few side projects actually. But when I'm bored or something, I can just go on any website that I enjoy and say, okay, today I'm going to move up in ranking, because also I enjoy solo playing, which is not really competitive. Which two examples. So coding game, we have that like a XP system. You solve a problem, you get like that amount of XP, and then you've got levels. One website that really has mastered this, I think, is Code Wars, which you have like problems with KU, and so it's like belts that you move up. And so sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm going to move like half a level up today. And so I set up my mind on a few problems that would allow me to do that. And just having this kind of satisfaction, and it really shows you, okay, now you are better than you were before coming here, and this is really satisfying as well.
Yeah, that's my favorite kind of competition, competing with the version of me that didn't make the effort.
True, yeah.
You know? Yeah, absolutely. So, are those your top recommendations for where I should? Because the thing about Advent of Code, it's great, but it's only 1 month a year, and it's the busiest month of the year, which has destroyed my Christmases once or twice.
You can play the archive. You can
play the archive. But where would you go for the most fun?
Where I have the most fun? Well, I would say coding game, but it's not a sponsored episode. I really enjoy the website and everything it has to offer, especially Clash of Code, which is my favorite format of all the website. We have also a very unique format, which is AI competition. So basically, you have like board game, any kind of game. Usually, we take inspiration from actual board games, or we just make our own. It's a small video game that's on a window on the left, and you have to code an AI that drives itself and tries to win the game against another AI. And we have twice a year a big competition on that. And we also have, if you want to solo practice, we have like 100 of those. So there's like chess. If you want to learn how a chess AI is made, you won't beat Stockfish, of course, but it's fun to learn how different kind of AIs work and stuff.
Okay.
So this is where I go for fun. And for more hardcore competitive programming, Code Forces would be my recommendation. The UI is debatable. It's a bit weird, but it's the content is extremely good.
Okay, I'm going to go and check them out. I've been wanting to sharpen some of my Gleam programming skills, so I might head there, and I'm going to log in anonymously because I don't want anyone listening to see my times.
Yeah, that works.
On that note, Mathis, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mathis. I'll put links to all the sites that he mentioned into the show notes, so if you want to go and play with one of those coding challenge sites, that's the place to look. We've also got a few back episodes of this podcast covering new and interesting languages like Gleam and Kotlin and Gren and some others. So if you want a new language to pair with your new programming challenge site, that could be the right place to look. All we need now is a sommelier to choose the right wine to pair with them. That'd be awesome. Another day, perhaps. As ever, if you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like and rate and share and subscribe. And while I'm thinking about it, someone told me yesterday that we weren't on Amazon Podcasts, which I didn't know about, but we are now. I fixed it and we're there now. So this podcast should be available on all the platforms that you like, but if there's a favourite one that's missing, please do let me know. My contact details are always in the show notes. And with that, I think it's time for us to all run off and play. Until next week, I've been your host, Chris Jenkins. This has been Developer Voices with Mathis Hammel. Thanks for listening.